This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Thursday, June 26th, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Trump insists U.S. strikes delivered a crushing blow to Iran's nuclear program. Ed Donahue, Washington.
The summer has proved dangerous so far as heat bears down on much of America.
Get into a shady area to keep yourself cool.
I'm Clayton Neville.
U.S. Representative LaMonica McIver has pleaded not guilty of assaulting and interfering with immigration officers. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Zohran Mamdani. President Trump and New York's Democrat mayor do not want him to lead the Big Apple.
On Wall Street, the tech-heavy NASDAQ index opens this morning at a fresh record high. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
The latest on Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the newest crew to blast off into space. All ahead on America in the Morning. Meeting with NATO leaders. President Trump hailed pledges by member nations to significantly increase military spending by 2035 and also turned his sights on both Ukraine and Iran. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports the president left the door open to sending anti-missile systems to Ukraine and announced he will be sitting down with Iran regarding their nuclear intent.
President Trump insists U.S. strikes delivered a crushing blow to Iran's nuclear program. At the NATO summit, the president said there will be talks next week with Iranian officials, and the only thing he wants is for Iran to have no nuclears.
We destroyed the nuclear. In other words, it's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up.
An initial U.S. intelligence report found Iran's nuclear program has been set back only a few months.
It could be severe or maybe not. They use the word severe. It could be severe or maybe it's not.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked about the intelligence report.
These leakers are professional stabbers.
Iran insists it will not give up its nuclear program. A foreign ministry spokesman confirmed the U.S. strikes had caused significant damage, but didn't go into detail. The fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding.
They do want to have the anti-missile missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available.
President Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the NATO summit. Zelensky said on X he and the president talked about the possibility of Kyiv co-producing drones with American companies and buying American air defense systems.
What I took from the meeting couldn't have been nicer, actually, but I took from the meeting that he'd like to see it end. I think it's a great time to end it. I'm going to speak to Vladimir Putin and see if we can get it ended.
Zelensky added on X, Putin is not winning. The president says Russia's Vladimir Putin needs to work this out.
I know one thing he'd like to settle. He'd like to get out of this thing. It's a mess for him. He called the other day. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, you can help me with Russia.
The president also left open the possibility of sending Ukraine more U.S.-made Patriot air defense missile systems.
So we'll make it up. You know what we're going to do? We're negotiating with Spain on a trade deal. We're going to make them pay twice as much. And I'm actually serious about that.
He also said increased spending by NATO countries could help prevent future Russian aggression against its neighbors.
So they're going to be, most of them, I guess almost all of them, are going to be contributing now 5%.
Ed Donahue, Washington.
Summer sun continues to bear down on parts of the Midwest and Northeast, posing concerns about heat exhaustion for millions of people. New records have been set for daytime high temperature records. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
About 128 million Americans under heat warnings or advisories. New York City saw 99 degrees this week. Boston broke a record at 101, and the feels-like temperature reached hotter than 110 degrees this week in the Carolinas. Amtrak warning passengers about potential heat-related problems. Railroad tracks are vulnerable to heat and can experience misalignments or sun kinks. Ken Graham is the director of the National Weather Service. He's urging Americans to keep safe from the impacts of the heat.
Get into a shady area to keep yourself cool, get into an air-conditioned area, or even a cooling shelter is a safe place to be in the heat. Wear light colored clothing. Stay really cool by doing that. Loose fitting really helps as well.
Doctors warn the heat can be deadly.
Thirst is one of the early symptoms, and then as people get dehydrated, they start getting headaches. And then as the body starts heating up, it really has significant effects on the brain. It can cause nausea, vomiting, confusion, and then eventually people can pass out, and eventually it can kill people.
Dr. Jeffrey Metzger is the emergency director at Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
Obviously, there's a lot of reasons people can't avoid it. So if you're going to be outside in this heat, you can prevent it by staying hydrated.
It's been a dangerous summer this week in America. 20 people were injured when lightning struck a popular summer lake destination in Lexington County, South Carolina, and a New Jersey beach lifeguard in the hospital after she was impaled by an umbrella that blew off the lifeguard stand in the wind. I'm Clayton Neville.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. Smarter sleep is life-changing. Save over $600 on a Sleep Number King P5 smart bed, the lowest price of the season, only at a Sleep Number store. A socialist Democrat leading New York City? That's when America in the Morning continues after these messages. America in the Morning continues, and so does the heat for today across the nation. With the forecast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson.
After some brutal heat over the past few days, we are going to see some cooler air move into at least parts of the Northeast today. And even where it's not a big cool down, at least temperatures don't look quite as hot as what we were seeing for the past few days. But especially across New England, that's where we'll see the most noticeable cool down. High temperatures today in the 70s, even the 60s in some spots. Even across most of upstate New York, high temperatures will be in the 70s this afternoon. This is a backdoor cold front, which means the cooler air is coming in out of the north and east and pushing off to the south and southwest. Now, even New York City, high temperature close to 80 after 3 straight days of 95-plus degree temperatures. And Philadelphia today a little bit better, up to around 88, but still in the 90s for Baltimore and Washington. We will be watching for some heavy thunderstorms today across parts of Pennsylvania and through the mid-Atlantic states. Could be some heavy storms, too. Some typical summertime spotty thunderstorms across much of the southeast for today. Now, the heat will continue across parts of the Midwest through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. Lots of highs in the 90s for today. There is going to be the risk for some strong, perhaps severe thunderstorms from parts of Wisconsin back through Iowa, even into the central plain states. Could be some damaging winds and hail with some of those storms as they move on through. Pretty quiet through the southern plains, and then out across the west, we're going to be watching the potential for some heavy thunderstorms developing in eastern Montana. Much of the rest of the west, though, will be dry on this Thursday. And that's the weather across America. In Boise, Idaho today, mostly sunny, a high of 89. And in Baltimore today, hot and humid with sun and some clouds. Some heavy thunderstorms around in the afternoon with a high of 95. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson.
You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Simply search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. President Trump, the lone Republican running for mayor in New York, and the current Democrat mayor, who's now in the independent line, all have one thing in common. They're all vehemently against the 33-year-old Democrat Socialist and vocal critic of Israel seeking to become New York City's first Muslim and Indian American mayor. Correspondent Julie Walker takes a look at Zohran Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani has been a Democratic Queens Assembly member since 2021. Last year, the progressive announced his run for mayor with a series of viral social media videos.
This campaign is for every New Yorker who believes in the dignity of their neighbors.
Tuesday night, he declared victory against his top challenger, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, in the primary, which is still being counted because of ranked choice voting.
You have my word to reach further, to understand the perspectives of those with whom I disagree.
Critics say his experience and leadership are limited. The 33-year-old was once a foreclosure prevention counselor. He's also a one-time rapper and son of award-winning Hollywood filmmaker Mira Nair. Mamdani was born in Uganda and became an American citizen shortly after college. He's seeking to be the city's first Muslim and Indian American mayor. Julie Walker, New York.
A member of Congress says she's not guilty of interfering with ICE agents at a New Jersey detention center. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on charges against Congresswoman LaMonica McIver.
The charges come from a congressional oversight visit at the Delaney Hall facility in Newark on May 9th. McIver, who's a Democrat, was charged last month in a complaint by interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, a Republican appointed by President Trump. McIver said outside the Newark court after the hearing that she will not be intimidated.
We've seen different cases of this administration bullying and intimidating elected leaders, from judges to anyone that gets in their way. This is what they do. And we will not stand for it. I will not stand for it.
Newark's mayor was also arrested at the detention center the same day, but that charge was dropped. I'm Haya Panjwani.
In sports, the Dallas Mavericks select Cooper Flagg #1 overall in the 2025 NBA Draft. When we return on America in the Morning, a check of home sales and U.S. stocks, tech versus everything else, after these messages. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's the Thursday Report with CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after a mixed day for stocks yesterday. The NASDAQ opens this morning at a new record high. The S&P 500 index is pretty close to 1, too. Companies with record highs yesterday include lots of tech names: Broadcom, CrowdStrike, Palantir, Oracle, Microsoft, Netflix, and NVIDIA.
It's not about tech versus everything else, but it is large cap quality. There's no doubt that, most of what the market is doing is an endorsement of the bull trend.
That's CNBC's Mike Santoli. Shell has denied it's in talks to buy oil company BP after a Wall Street Journal report that said early talks between the two are on. EU regulators are looking closely at candy maker Mars, which makes M&Ms. It's proposing a takeover of Kellanova, which is the snack food spinoff from Kellogg's, and it makes Pringles and other chips. Regulators are worried that a combination of these two could lead to price increases because it'll boost Mars's negotiating power with retailers. Sales of new homes tanked in May. Supply of newly built homes just sitting there waiting to be bought is at a 3-year high.
Sales of newly built homes dropped nearly 14% in May from April. Now, nationally, the median price of a new home sold in May was $426,600, an increase of 3% year over year. Slower sales, though, resulted in a significant bump higher in supply. We ended May with a 9.8-month supply. As for new homes, Lennar was cutting prices. KB Home prices were a little higher. But remember, builders are doing all kinds of incentives and still buying down those mortgage rates in order to get buyers in.
CNBC's Diana Olick. Facebook parent Meta got a sweet deal for a new $10 billion data center in the state of Louisiana.
They are, after all, the backbone of the artificial intelligence revolution, and Louisiana has just reeled in a huge one. This site is massive, best viewed from the air. 2,250 acres, but this project will create just 500 permanent jobs. Even at the height of construction, it's just 5,000. Yet, Louisiana is giving Meta a rebate on potentially billions of dollars in sales taxes. A CNBC investigation just last week found those sales tax breaks increasingly popular. Susan Bourgeois is Secretary of Economic Development.
This wasn't about what the state would win or lose from just that one isolated sales tax. This was about, we want to compete with Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina.
And bring new vitality to one of the poorest regions of the country.
That's CNBC's Scott Cohn. You can see the full report at CNBC.com. On today's watch list, we get earnings from Nike. And we find out how many people applied for unemployment benefits last week.
Thank you, Jessica. When we return on America in the Morning, the fate of a Salvadorian migrant. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. Well, forget pop singers, girlfriends, and TV personalities. The latest launch of a private flight to the International Space Station included 4 astronauts from 4 different countries. Correspondent Julie Walker reports.
SpaceX's Falcon rocket blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center early Wednesday, carrying astronauts from the U.S., India,
3,
Hungary, and
2,
Poland.
1, ignition, and liftoff.
Houston company Axiom Space arranged the deal, and India, Poland, and Hungary are sharing the more than $65 million per customer tab. Earlier this month at an Axiom news conference, Flight Commander and American Peggy Whitson said one experiment they'd be conducting is on diabetes.
A person with diabetes can't fly in space because it's disqualifying. And not considered to be safe because we wouldn't know how their bodies would respond. And so if we have the appropriate technology to monitor the individuals, we feel that, we can open up that door and that path for a lot of folks in the world and just open up space a little bit more.
The mission will last 2 weeks. I'm Julie Walker.
A judge has ordered Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadorian migrant deported to El Salvador before being returned to the U.S. earlier this month to face prosecution, to be placed into the custody of his brother should he be released from custody by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. However, for now, Abrego Garcia will remain behind bars as attorneys in the federal smuggling case being brought against him by the government spar over whether prosecutors have the ability to prevent the man's deportation if he's released to await trial. Had Abrego Garcia been released by the judge, ICE agents were expected to take him into custody due to an immigration detainer the government has on him. America in the Morning for Thursday, June 26th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour,
President Donald Trump is insisting that Iran's nuclear program was fully obliterated. I'm Julie Walker.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is repeating his warning about tariffs. Ed Donahue, Washington.
Medicaid reforms are a key sticking point for Senate Republicans trying to finalize Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
The man accused of attacking a pro-Israel group in Boulder, Colorado, now facing federal hate crime charges. I'm Clayton Neville.
Second Lady Usha Vance opens up about keeping family life as normal as possible. I'm Sue Aller.
Hold on, did The Simpsons really kill off a character? I'm Kevin Carr.
Our show returns after these messages. America in the Morning continues. Well, take your pick. Severe weather, high heat. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson is in with the forecast. What are we looking at today?
We're going to be watching for the potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms across parts of the plains and the Midwest as we head throughout this afternoon, especially from eastern Kansas through about Kansas City up through Des Moines and then northeastward into Minneapolis, Madison, Milwaukee. All have the potential to see some stronger storms. Could be some flooding, downpours, some damaging wind gusts and hail with some of these storms as well. Now, south and east of where these thunderstorms are, it's going to be a pretty hot day. Temperatures back into the 90s in Chicago, around St. Louis, over through Indianapolis and Columbus, looking at highs in the 90s again for this afternoon. There will be some thunderstorms around and across parts of lower Michigan and across much of the eastern part of the country from the mid-Atlantic down through the southeast. We're going to be dodging some thunderstorms, especially from parts of Virginia up through Maryland and eastern Pennsylvania. There could be some pretty heavy downpours of some of those storms, which could lead to some flash flooding in some areas. But farther north and east toward New York City into southern New England, just a spotty shower as some much cooler air is going to be moving on in. A high closer to 70 today in Boston, closer to 80 in New York City, so much different than the past few days. Farther south and west toward Philadelphia, still approaching 90, and we'll still get into the mid-90s around Baltimore and Washington, but at least some progress from some of the extreme heat we had earlier in the week. Now, out across the west, we're going to be watching for some thunderstorms popping up across parts of Montana and through parts of New Mexico, West Texas, some monsoon thunderstorms trying to develop there. Across the rest of the desert southwest, though, it looks dry and mostly dry along the west coast, just a couple of spotty showers across western parts of Washington. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Brian Thompson.
You can certainly follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. President Trump and members of his administration are insisting that U.S. strikes on Iran delivered a crushing blow to the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. Correspondent Donna Warder reports.
President Donald Trump is insisting that Iran's nuclear program was completely and fully obliterated during U.S. airstrikes over the weekend. He says a letter from Israel's Atomic Energy Commission states the damage.
The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come.
A preliminary American intelligence assessment suggested that the U.S. assault on Iran inflicted only a marginal setback. At a news conference wrapping up the NATO summit in the Netherlands, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth accused the media of trying to find a way to spin the story to hurt Trump and the country.
These air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think.
I'm Donna Warder.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell is not backing down on interest rates, testifying for a second day that inflation remains a fluid issue. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports that Powell's statements are not being received well by President Trump, who wants a cut in the prime lending rate.
Because the rate's high, we have to pay more for debt. It's pretty equal. In other words, if it's 4%, it's 4%. If you drop it a point, you'll pay 3%. So it's fairly equal, not necessarily, but fairly equal. So we're going to end up paying maybe 2 points or 3 points more. 3 points would be about $900 billion a year because of this very average mentally person. He's an average mentally person. I'd say low in terms of what he does, low IQ for what he does, okay?
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is repeating his warning about tariffs.
At this time, all forecasters are expecting pretty soon that some significant inflation will show up from tariffs. Now, we can't just ignore that. But we're just saying let's wait and see more. That's all we're doing.
Powell told a Senate committee the Fed wants to wait to cut interest rates because the outlook from experts is President Trump's tariffs will likely boost inflation.
Not yet, but over the course of the coming months. And I think it's reasonable to expect that because someone has to pay. This is hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs we're taking in. Some of that's going to fall on the consumer.
Some Republicans, including Bernie Moreno from Ohio, question Powell's intent.
And I just think that you should consider whether you're really looking at this from a fiscal lens or a political lens, because you just don't like tariffs.
And Powell's stance on interest rates got this reaction from President Trump at the NATO summit.
He's probably a very political guy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a very stupid person, actually.
So far, inflation has steadily cooled this year, despite the threat of tariffs. Ed Donahue, Washington.
With a self-imposed deadline of July 4th, senators are racing to try and finish up their version of President Trump's big, beautiful spending bill. One key sticking point for the GOP is Medicaid. Following the story in Washington, our John Stolness.
Some Republican senators are proposing cuts to Medicaid that go beyond what the House's version of the bill would do, which critics say would leave nearly 11 million more people without health coverage. Now, Republicans are meeting behind closed doors to come up with a solution that would help rural hospitals affected by any changes, aimed at shrinking an entitlement that has grown dramatically in the 15 years since Obamacare became law. Republican Tom Tillis tells CNN there's still a lot of work to do.
I think that the Medicaid cuts are directionally right, but I think very difficult for the states to absorb.
Currently, about 80 million people receive Medicaid, and Republicans want to shrink that number by putting a new 80-hour-a-month work requirement on it, as well as a provider tax states charge hospitals that help fund Medicaid. One idea, the creation of a rural hospital fund to help offset lost Medicaid revenue, an idea to which Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth responded on CNN.
It's like the person setting the fire saying, hey, you know what? We need a fire department.
when you're the one that set the fire to begin with. These hospitals are going to shut down. 30% of our safety net hospitals will shut down if these Medicaid cuts go through.
And Republican Senator Susan Collins tells CNN she's not comfortable with where things stand.
I've also been concerned about the health of rural hospitals, nursing homes, community health centers, and have been working on a provider relief fund.
Much of the rest of the big beautiful bill has already been drafted and agreed to, including an extension of the Trump tax cuts and an increase in border security spending. John Stolnis, Washington.
Legal battle continues over transgender athletes when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The man accused of throwing Molotov cocktails at a group of Israel supporters in Boulder, Colorado, is charged with federal hate crimes. An update from Correspondent Clayton Neville.
A federal judge recently ruled that Mohammed Salman could be charged with hate crimes. Earlier this month, the Egyptian national was seen on video tossing Molotov cocktails toward a pro-Israel group who regularly gathered in Boulder. Investigators believe Salman planned the attack for a year and was driven by a desire to kill all Zionist people. The Justice Department says he's now facing a total of 12 hate crime charges. Salman has not yet entered a formal plea. If convicted, he could be sentenced to life in prison. Prosecutors have to prove that he targeted the victims based on color, religion, national origin, or race. Salman also facing 118 state charges. 28 of those counts are first-degree attempted murder. I'm Clayton Neville.
The state of California has been found in violation of Title IX in another clash with Trump administration officials over transgender athletes. Correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh reports.
The Trump administration has found that the California Department of Education and the state's high school sports federation violated civil rights law by allowing transgender girls to compete on girls' sports teams. The federal education department announced the finding Wednesday. The agency proposed a resolution that would require California to bar transgender women from women's sports and strip transgender athletes of records, titles, and awards. It's the latest escalation in the Trump administration's effort to bar transgender athletes from women's sports nationwide. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
A massive cargo ship carrying 3,000 new cars to Mexico caught fire and has sunk in international waters off Alaska's Aleutian Islands. Correspondent Ben Thomas has details.
The Morning Midas cargo ship caught fire earlier this month. It had been carrying some 3,000 new cars to a port in Mexico. All 22 crew members abandoned ship and were rescued by a nearby vessel. Now the Coast Guard reports the ship has sunk. Damage from the fire, bad weather, and water seepage the causes. The Coast Guard says there's no visible pollution right now, but both they and the ship's management company have vessels on site in case that changes. It's unclear if any of the cars were taken off the Morning Midas before it sank. I'm Ben Thomas.
The Second Lady of the United States gave an inside look into the Vance family and what's important for her, her vice president husband, and their children. With more on the revelation, here's Sue Aller reporting.
Second Lady Usha Vance opened up on Meghan McCain's podcast about balancing public life, parenting, and her interfaith family with Vice President J.D. Vance. Usha, who is Hindu, and J.D., a Catholic convert, had this to say on the Citizen McCain podcast about religion.
But we make going to church a family experience. The kids know that I'm not Catholic.
She also said that her children go to Catholic school.
So, right, they can choose whether they want to be baptized Catholic and then go through the whole step-by-step process with their classes in school. And so far, our oldest child has done that, and we'll see what our second child does.
She said her kids also have access to Hindu traditions.
From books that we give them to things that we show them, to the visit recently to India and some of the religious elements of that visit.
Usha also talks about keeping family life as normal as possible. despite the public spotlight.
Almost every decision that we make is directed at making it as much like what it would have been like if they'd been growing up in Cincinnati as we planned.
She says even though there are people around her who can do things for her and her children, she still has her kids do everyday things.
They have to put away their laundry, right? They have to, if they spill something, they have to clean it up.
Usha also discussed her unexpected political journey, saying that 4 years ago, she had absolutely no intention of leading any sort of life in politics. I'm Sue Aller.
A House subcommittee wants to ban the use of foreign AI by government employees, likening it to a new Cold War. Chuck Palm has details in today's Tech Report.
The AI arms race is heating up in Congress. Representative John Molinar, the Republican chair of the House Select Committee on China, kicked off a hearing entitled Algorithms and Authoritarianism: Why U.S. AI Must Lead. Molinar said the future balance of power may very well be determined by who leads in AI. Molinar made no bones about pushing for an all-American first policy and protect U.S. tech and enforce airtight export controls to keep advanced AI out of authoritarian hands. He also warned that the Chinese Communist Party is moving fast and not playing fair. In addition, he introduced the bipartisan No Adversarial AI Act, a bill designed to block federal agencies from using AI linked to foreign adversaries like China and citing risks to national security and data privacy. Molinar also stressed that AI is the strategic tech of our time, likening it to a new Cold War battleground. For more, find me at chuckpalm.com.
Let's jump into the Thursday Sports Report. Here's Robert Workman.
The NBA draft tipped off last night. As expected, Commissioner Adam Silver.
With the first pick in the 2025 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Cooper Flagg from Duke University.
Thanks, ESPN. The Duke freshman forward led the Blue Devils to the Final Four, won multiple National Player of the Year honors, and won't even turn 19 until December. Baseball Wednesday, 7 shutout performances in the majors, including a near no-hitter. Jacob deGrom took a no-no into the 8th as the Rangers routed the Orioles 7-0.
Really, the 2 walks kind of killed me. That got my pitch count up, and, we've been kind of sticking around the 80 mark, so probably would have taken a lot of pitches to get 6 more out.
Colton Cowser's leadoff knock in the 8th, the only hit the Birds got. Cubs crushed the Cardinals 8-0. Ian Happ's leadoff homer was all that Matthew Boyd and the boys really needed. They allowed just 4 hits. A's blanked the Tigers 3-0. Jacob Lopez and company with a 4-hitter. Drew Rasmussen and the Artists gave up just 3 hits in the Rays' 3-0 win over the Royals.
We're playing really well, and it's hard to complain right now. When things are going really well, it makes coming to the Art every day a lot of fun. And I think, you're starting to see the multitudes of ways we can win games.
The Twins sank the Mariners 2-0 behind the 3-hit pitching of Joe Ryan and the Express. Astros throttled the Phillies 2-0. Colton Gordon and the Corral scattered 7 hits. And the Padres shut out the Nationals 1-0. Nick Pivetta fanned 10 in a combined 3-hitter. Max Fried became the first 10-game winner this year as the Yankees ripped the Reds 7-1. Mets beat the Braves 7-3. Juan Soto homered twice. Dodgers drilled the Rockies 8-1. Guardians winged the Blue Jays 5-4 in 10 innings. Jose Ramirez with the walk-off single. Marlins scored 4 times in the 10th to take down the Giants 8-5. Angels swept out the Red Sox 5-2. White Sox whacked the Diamondbacks 7-3. 2 taters for Lenin Sosa. And the Brewers doubled up the Pirates 4-2. That's Thursday Sports.
When America in the Morning returns, B-2 bombers, bunker-busting bombs, what Americans are saying after these messages. Prior to the United States sending B-2 stealth bombers and bunker-busting bombs to attack Iran's nuclear sites, many of President Trump's ardent supporters were against America getting involved into another foreign war. But as correspondent Haya Panjwani reports, the reaction by MAGA voters to the American involvement abroad in Iran has turned positive.
As President Donald Trump prepared to bomb Iran's nuclear sites, many of the most prominent leaders of his MAGA movement warned that he was making a big mistake. But Trump voters across the country this week and early polling suggests that his decision to bomb Iran was popular with his base. 39-year-old Holly Cheney.
I think he knows what's best for the country. He thinks ahead. He doesn't think about now. You know what I mean? He scares people. He scares these other presidents, these other countries, because they don't know what he can do. And I love that. I love it because Biden was such a little weenie.
Longtime GOP leader in Oklahoma, Pam Pollard.
This is a job that the entire world, save a very small few, the entire world knew needed to happen. America was the only nation with the ability to do so.
An early poll shows that a vast majority of Republican registered voters, more than 80%, support the U.S. joining Israel in striking Iran's nuclear sites. Hayat Panjwani, Washington.
Watchers of TV's The Simpsons are questioning whether one of the most successful animated series in history tried to kill off a main character. Entertainment reporter Kevin Carr has the answer.
When The Simpsons aired its 36th season finale, fans were left in an existential crisis. The episode, entitled Stranger Things, jumped ahead 35 years, showing Bart and Lisa growing apart. With the help of a weepy Sarah McLachlan ballad, we learned that Marge Simpson had passed away.
'Cause Marge passed before Homer, if you can believe it.
Bart and Lisa reconcile, but the episode ends with Marge in heaven kissing her new hubby, Beatles drummer and longtime crush Ringo Starr.
I'm just so happy my kids are close again.
Love, we'll be late for the heaven buffet. There's a shrimp tower.
Okay, Ringo. And I'm just so glad we're allowed to marry different people in heaven.
The show has been renewed through season 40, but will Marge be along for the ride? Characters have been killed off before, but none from the core nuclear family. Well, that's not exactly true. The series has flash-forwarded before, and these events are not set in stone. For example, in the 7th episode of the previous season, It's a Blunderful Life, Homer is said to die before Marge.
Our first Thanksgiving since Homer passed away.
More turkey, please.
Thank God we still have his hologram.
We don't know if Marge's potential death will be ignored when the show returns in the fall, but considering Bart has been in the 4th grade for 36 years, time flies differently in Springfield. I'm Kevin Carr.
And that's our show on this, the final Thursday of June. America in the Morning for June 26th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.